Elf decks are incredibly fun, synergistic, and powerful. We chose the top 10 elf creatures to get your elf deck popping off. There are over 500 elves out there to choose from, but we got your back with the 10 must-have creatures for any elf deck. And starting at number 10, we have Lalanor Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Findhorn Elves. These are the 1-mana dorks, and there are several to choose from, but they all pretty much do the exact same thing. They cost 1 and tap for 1 mana. Pretty simple, but it can ramp you real quickly early in the game and provide an extra body later for your overrun strategy. Elves like to go wide, and every single elf that you have down the end game is another bit of fuel for that sweet Crater Hoof sweet, baby. At number 9, we have Leaf Crowned Visionary. What makes this elf amazing is it's a 2-mana lord, pumping up all your elves and only costing 2 to put down, which most other elf lords cost at least 3. So this is great value for just a couple forest taps. And additionally, it lets you draw extra cards when you play your elves, which can keep your hand full of threats to keep slamming down on the table. So this is extremely helpful and an elf strategy to be able to continuously draw cards while you ramp faster than everybody else. And the 8th spot, there is Priest of Titania. This card aired in Urza's Saga back in 1998. And this elf can add an insane amount of mana super quickly. And at 2 CMC, she's cheaper than all the other high mana producing elves, which we'll see later on the list. So extremely good value, once again, at only 2 CMC. Put her in your decks. At number 7, we have Circle of Dreams Druid. This card's effect may look familiar because it does the exact same thing as Gaia's Cradle, but you don't have to spend $3,000 to get it. It does cost 1 more mana to play than Priest of Titania, but the added ability to generate mana for non-elves puts it a spot ahead in our book. At number 6, there is Beast Whisperer. This card aired in Guilds of Ravnica back in 2018 and has been seen frequently in green decks ever since. It's passive card draw every time you play a creature, and it helps with elf deck's biggest problem, card draw. Elf creatures are often cheap, creating a huge board state quickly, but if your board gets wiped, you might be left with an empty hand and no hope. Beast Whisperer helps you keep a full grip as you swarm your opponents with pesky elves and keep the party going. In the 5th spot, we have Elvish Archdruid. This helpful elf does 2 of the best things that you want to do in an elf deck, and that is it pumps up all of your weenie elves and can tap for an outrageous amount of mana. Basically a Priest of Titania that's also a lord, and you're going to be excited to see this elf pop into your hand in the mid game. And now we're getting into the juggernauts. At number 4, we have Allosaurus Shepherd. This elf provides an insane amount of value for a 1-drop creature, protecting all of your creature spells from getting countered, and can pump up all your elves in the end game to swing in for the win. The price has come down considerably after being reprinted in Double Masters 2022, but it's still pricey as of 2023 at around $24. And in the 3rd spot, we have Lathril, Blade of the Elves. Lathril hit the scene as the lead commander of the 2021 Kaldheim Precon Elven Empire, and since then Lathril has been the 2nd most popular commander, according to EDHREC, of any commander out there. She has Menace, which helps her get to your opponent's face, and when she deals damage to a player, she makes elf tokens. What more could you want? Already a great card if this is all she did. But her last ability has a devastating effect where you tap 10 elves and dish out 10 damage to each opponent, and then you also get 10 life. So if you're having trouble getting through with your army of elf weenies, all you gotta do is tap them and dole out huge amounts of damage straight to your opponents. Really powerful. And in the 2nd spot, we have Azuri Renegade Leader. Azuri is one of the OG elf commanders, airing in Scars of Mirrodin in 2010. And I personally had an Azuri elf deck for a long time, and it did some serious work. His ability to regenerate all elves besides himself is very strong and lets you attack with impunity. His pump effect also gives trample and can be used more than once a turn if you have access to lots of mana. And with creatures like Priest of Titania and Circle of Dreams Druid, it's very likely that you can activate this ability 2, 3, 4 more times in a single turn to close out the game. And before we get to our number 1 elf, let's go over our honorable mentions. These elves are all super powerful, but aren't all geared for pure elf tribal. First up, we have Jared Golgari Leechlord. He leans heavy into Golgari synergy, letting you sack big creatures to crush your opponents. Jared can be a tough commander to build around though, as you have to have a delicate balance of self-mill, recursion, and big creatures to throw at your opponents. So it's a little difficult to get that right, but if you do, you're going to create nightmares for your pod. And next up we have Azuri, Claw of Progress. He has the ability to create experience counters by playing small creatures and then slings out heaps of counters each turn. Experience counters also can't be removed, and so that's going to create an ongoing headache that your opponents are going to notice real fast. And then we have Freylease. She isn't a creature, but all three of her abilities are tremendous in an elf deck. Her up ability essentially makes Llanowar elves. Her down ability can deal with a pesky threat on the table, and her ult can draw you a ton of cards. So she's an honorary elf. Put her in your elf deck, you won't be disappointed. So at this point, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to Compleat Magic, turn on notification bells and to stay up to date with our top 10 videos, tribe talks, and budget swaps. Each subscribe helps the channel considerably, and if you want to help the channel even more, consider using the TCG Player affiliate link in the description when you pick up your next batch of cards. And at long last, in the top spot, we have Marwyn the Nurturer. She was released in Dominaria back in 2018 and has been a force in CEDH since. She is the epitome of Elf Ball, which involves generating mana and playing creatures in an almost exponential way, completely overwhelming opponents in a short period of time. She can add loads of mana, but isn't reliant on other creatures being on the battlefield to do so. You can throw some counters on her, attach equipment, auras, or just pump her up with your other elf lords. So Marwyn, she's the queen, baby mama of the elves, and she deserves the #1 spot. So there we have it. That's our list of the top 10 elves in Magic the Gathering. Let us know in the comments what you think of the list and any elves we may have missed. And if you want to learn about the best cards in another spicy tribe, check out our video here with the top 10 dragons.